My name is Emma, I'm 28, and my parents forced me into our unheated garage so my pregnant sister could have my bedroom. Before I tell you how I discovered my own fiancé was the baby's father and how their entire world crumbled, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. It all started, as these things often do, with a phone call. But the real beginning was 3 years earlier. 3 years of my life, my savings, my future, all poured into a house that was slowly becoming my prison. I'm an architectural engineer. I design things, I build things, I solve problems. And for my family, I had become the ultimate solution. The garage was cold. Not just a little chilly, but a deep, damp cold that seeped through the concrete floor and into your bones. I sat on a lumpy, ancient couch that smelled of mildew and regret, listening. Upstairs, I could hear them. Laughter. The sound of furniture being scraped across the hardwood floors of my bedroom. My room. My mother's cheerful directing, my sister Olivia's delighted squeals. They were nesting. In my nest. While I was relegated to the place we kept the lawnmower and forgotten Christmas decorations. It's just temporary, honey, my mother had said on the phone, her voice syrupy with a sweetness that always preceded a demand. Olivia needs the space. For the baby. You understand. It's family. Family. That word had been the justification for everything. 3 years ago, I was packing the last of my boxes. I had the keys to a new apartment, deposit paid, first month's rent ready. I was 25 and about to start my life. Then the phone rang. It was my dad, his voice thick with a sound I'd never heard from him before, pure panic. He'd been in an accident at the construction site. His back was shattered. His disability checks wouldn't even cover a fraction of the mortgage. He was crying, actually crying, telling me they were going to lose the house. My house. The one I grew up in. So, I unpacked. I took my apartment money, my freedom money, and paid their mortgage. I told myself it was temporary. Just until Dad was back on his feet. Just until Mom's health issues stabilized. Just until my younger sister, Olivia, the beautiful, fragile one who floated through life on a cloud of excuses, found a job she could hold for more than a month. 3 years later, I was still waiting. I paid for everything. The mortgage, the utilities, the groceries, the repairs. My salary, which I had been so proud of, became community property. I became their human shock absorber for every financial hit. And they had gotten comfortable. Too comfortable. They forgot what struggle felt like because I absorbed it all. Now, I was sitting in a garage, a space heater wheezing pathetically in the corner, because Olivia was pregnant. She didn't know who the father was, she claimed. Another one of Olivia's little messes that the family had to clean up. And my room, with the walk-in closet I'd designed and built myself, with the big window that caught the morning sun, was the perfect place for her to start her new life. My life could be put on hold. Again. I looked at the diamond on my finger. Mark, my fiancé. He was the one bright spot, my escape plan. We were saving for our own house, planning the wedding. He'd been so supportive, telling me how strong I was, how admirable. He didn't know about the garage yet. I couldn't bring myself to tell him that his future wife, a successful engineer, was sleeping next to a stack of bald tires. I pulled my thin blanket tighter. Temporary, I whispered into the cold air. But for the first time, the word tasted like a lie. A lie I had been telling myself for 1,095 days. And I was done believing it. The past has a funny way of clinging to you, like the damp chill of that garage. To understand how I got there, you have to understand the dynamic of my family. I was the reliable one. Olivia was the brilliant one. At least, that's what they always said. I got good grades through hard work, she got B's with natural charm that convinced teachers to give her extensions. I worked every summer saving for college. She'd use her allowance, which mysteriously came from my parents' account well into her 20s, to fund weekend trips with friends. I remember one night, about a year after I'd moved back home. Olivia had decided to start a custom jewelry business. It was her passion, she declared. My parents, of course, thought it was a wonderful idea. They gave her a few $1,000s, money I knew they didn't really have, to buy supplies. 2 months later, the business was defunct, the supplies were collecting dust in the basement, and Olivia was crying because she'd maxed out 3 credit cards on a business trip to Miami. I was the one who sat down with her, worked out a payment plan, and used a chunk of my own savings, money I was setting aside for my wedding, to pay off the most urgent debt so it wouldn't ruin her credit. "You're such a lifesaver, Emma," she'd sobbed, hugging me. "I don't know what we'd do without you." I didn't either. That was the problem. They had stopped imagining a life without me as their safety net. Even my friendship with Sarah, my closest colleague from work, was a source of friction. We'd grab lunch, and I'd come home to my mom saying, "Must be nice to have so much free time." Olivia's been home all day helping me. Helping her meant watching reality TV on the couch while my mom did the laundry. "They're walking all over you," Sarah told me during one of our video calls, after I'd finally admitted my new living situation. I tried to downplay it, calling it a temporary shuffle and making room. Sarah wasn't buying it. Her face on my laptop screen was stern. "Emma, no. They kicked you out of your own room in a house you pay for. That's not a shuffle. That's an eviction. You're a tenant with all the responsibilities of a landlord and none of the rights." She was right. Hearing someone else say it out loud made the absurdity of it all crash down on me. I was funding their lives, and my reward was a concrete floor and a space heater that smelled like burning dust. That night, something inside me shifted. The exhaustion I'd been feeling for 3 years began to harden. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was a cold, quiet anger. My family saw me as a utility, a resource. My fiancé, Mark, saw me as strong and admirable. But was I? Or was I just a fool who let her love for her family become a leash around her own neck? The sacrifice I made out of love had become an expectation. An obligation. And the resentment, which I had been carefully packing down for years, was starting to expand. It was a dangerous, volatile pressure building deep inside me. I was no longer just trying to survive the temporary. I was starting to plan my escape from the permanent. The first week in the garage was a masterclass in weaponized incompetence, theirs, not mine. My first act of rebellion was silence. I stopped being the household's designated problem solver. It was a subtle shift, but in a house that ran on my constant maintenance, it was the equivalent of a tectonic plate grinding to a halt. Monday morning, Olivia's new roommate, my mother, cornered me as I was heading out. "The coffee maker is making that weird noise again," she said, expecting me to stop and perform my usual 10-minute diagnostic. I just looked at her, then at the sputtering machine, and said, "Sounds broken." I walked out the door, leaving her standing there in stunned silence. Let her drink instant coffee. Not my problem. Tuesday, it was the kitchen faucet. The constant drip, drip, drip that had been grating on my nerves for a week. Normally, I would have replaced the washer in 5 minutes flat. Now, I sat at the table reading the news on my phone while my dad mentioned it twice, each time a little louder. I heard him. I just didn't care anymore. That drip could turn into a flood for all I cared. The change was most obvious with Olivia. She had fully embraced her role as the expectant mother, which apparently came with a complete inability to do anything for herself. "Emma, the Wi-Fi is slow in my room," she'd complain. "Can you move the router?" "Nope," I said, not looking up from my laptop where I was, ironically, browsing apartment listings. The rent for a decent studio was staggering. It was a stark reminder of how much of my own financial freedom I had sacrificed. Supporting one person, me, would be a luxury cruise. Supporting four felt like treading water with an anchor tied to my leg. Friday was the piece de resistance. The washing machine died mid-cycle, leaving a sloshing tub of gray water and Olivia's new maternity clothes. She found me in the garage, mid-push-up on the dusty concrete floor. "The washer's broken," she announced, as if I were the on-call repairman. "Yep," I said, continuing my count. 21. "Well, can you fix it?" she asked, her voice laced with disbelief that I hadn't already sprung into action. "No." "What are we supposed to do?" she wailed. "My clothes will be ruined." I finally stood up, grabbing a towel to wipe the sweat from my face. "That sounds like an adult problem, Olivia. You could try calling a repairman. They're people who fix things for money. It's a fascinating concept." Her mouth fell open. The old Emma would have spent her Friday night elbow-deep in grimy water, figuring out if it was a clogged drain line or a bad pump. The old Emma was dead. I had killed her myself, out of sheer necessity. They ended up calling a guy who charged them $200 for a $40 part and an hour of labor. I overheard Olivia complaining to my mom about the outrageous expense. She was sitting in my old armchair, in my old room, complaining about a bill I wasn't paying. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. That night, Mark came over. He found me in the garage, organizing the few boxes of belongings I cared about. He looked horrified. "What is all this? Emma, why are you out here?" I finally told him. I explained the situation calmly, factually. I expected outrage on my behalf. I expected him to storm into the house and defend me. Instead, he put his arm around me and said, "Wow, honey. That's tough. But you're so strong. It's amazing how you always handle everything. It's for family, right? Just for a little while." He didn't get it. He saw the same thing they did, Emma, the handler. Emma, the solution. He saw my strength not as a quality to be cherished, but as a resource to be used. A cold dread, colder than the concrete beneath my feet, began to creep into my heart. Later that evening, Mark left his phone on the charger in the garage when he went inside to say hi to my parents. I was packing a box of old college textbooks when it buzzed on the workbench. I glanced over. A message on the lock screen. From Ollie. Message: "You left already? They're driving me crazy in here. Need you. Ollie." That was his pet name for Olivia. My blood ran cold. It was one thing for them to be friendly, but the heart emoji? The "need you"? It was too intimate. My hand was shaking as I picked up the phone. My thumb hovered over the notification. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Part of me wanted to throw the phone against the wall and pretend I'd never seen it. But I couldn't. I had to know. I knew his passcode. We had no secrets, I'd thought foolishly. 1-2-8-9, our anniversary. The screen unlocked. My breath hitched. It wasn't just one message. It was a thread. Months of them. I started scrolling, my world dissolving with every word. Ollie, she has no idea. She's too busy paying bills to notice anything. Mark, I know. It's what makes her so perfect for us right now. Don't worry, baby. As soon as the baby comes, we'll figure out how to tell her. Ollie, I hate lying to her. Mark, it's not a lie, it's a plan. She's strong, she'll get over it. We deserve to be happy. And then, the one that shattered everything. A message from 2 months ago. Ollie, I'm scared, Mark. I'm pregnant. Mark, don't be. It's ours. It's a sign. This is our family. We'll have everything. Her salary to keep us stable and each other. I couldn't breathe. The garage suddenly felt like it was shrinking, the air thick and unbreathable. A wave of nausea washed over me. It wasn't just an affair. It was a conspiracy. My sister and my fiancé. They hadn't just betrayed me, they had built a life for themselves on the foundation of my hard work and sacrifice. The baby, Olivia's baby, was Mark's. My fiancé was the father of my sister's child. They weren't just taking my room. They were taking my entire life. And I was paying for it. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Something inside me snapped shut, like a steel door slamming into place. The pain was so immense, so absolute, that it folded in on itself and became something else. Something hard and sharp and clear. I felt a strange, hollow laugh bubble up in my chest, a sound that scared even me. I quickly stifled it. I looked down at the phone, at their smiling selfies, at their plans for my future, a future where I was their unwitting benefactor. My mind, the engineer's mind that they all relied on, started working. Not on fixing their problems, but on dismantling their world. I methodically, calmly, took my own phone and photographed every single screen of their conversation. Every message. Every picture. Every lie. I was no longer just planning an escape. I was planning a demolition. And I would be the one holding the detonator. The discovery didn't break me. It forged me. In the cold, suffocating silence of that garage, I stopped being their daughter, their sister, their fiancé. I became an architect of consequences. The next few weeks were a blur of quiet, calculated action. On the outside, I was the same sullen, withdrawn Emma, sleeping in the garage. On the inside, I was a general preparing for war. My first move was financial separation. I opened a new checking account at a different bank. I went to my company's HR department and rerouted my direct deposit. The next paycheck would be mine and mine alone. I meticulously went through my online accounts, removing my name and my payment information from every utility bill, every streaming service, every grocery delivery app. I was untangling myself from their lives, one thread at a time. Next, I found a small storage unit across town. Every day after work, before going home, I'd stop by the house while everyone was distracted by dinner or TV. I moved my things out piece by piece. Not the big furniture, I'd leave that for them to deal with, but everything that mattered. My important documents, passport, birth certificate, social security card. My personal treasures, photo albums, my grandmother's jewelry, the letters my best friend Sarah and I wrote to each other in college. My professional tools and my work computer, which held all my project files. I was erasing myself from the house, becoming a ghost in my own home. The most difficult part was maintaining the facade with Mark. He'd call, full of sweet words and empty promises about our future. He'd want to come over, to slum it in the garage with me, an act he saw as romantic solidarity. I made excuses. A looming deadline at work. Not feeling well. I kept him at a distance, my every interaction a performance. The love I'd felt for him had curdled into something that felt like disgust. Every "I love you" from him was a lie that scraped against my raw nerves. I would just reply "you too," my voice flat and dead. One afternoon, I was scrolling through a local classified site, looking for used furniture for my future, secret apartment. On a whim, I typed room for rent with my parents' zip code. And there it was. An ad posted by Olivia. Rustic and private student room for rent, $500 per month. Utilities included. Separate entrance. The pictures were of my garage. My garage. She had tidied up my sleeping bag, pushed my boxes into a neat pile, and taken deceptively well-lit photos. She was trying to profit from my displacement. She was going to charge some poor college kid $500 a month to live in an uninsulated concrete box, pocket the money, and continue to contribute nothing to the household I was still, for the moment, funding. The rage that I had been keeping on ice, that cold, hard resolve, flared hot for the first time. It wasn't just about the affair anymore. It was about their bottomless, parasitic entitlement. They didn't just want my support, they wanted to monetize my misery. They felt so entitled to my life, my space, and my money that they believed they had the right to sell off pieces of my humiliation for a profit. I saved a screenshot of the ad. Another piece of evidence. Another nail for their coffin. My plan had been to just disappear, to leave them to their own devices. But this changed things. A quiet exit wasn't enough. They didn't deserve the dignity of a mystery. They needed to be confronted with the full scope of their betrayal. They needed a public reckoning. They needed to see the architect of their comfortable lives become the architect of their downfall. And I would make sure the demolition was spectacular. The day I chose for the confrontation was a Saturday. I needed all the players on the stage at the same time. I started by replying to Olivia's rental ad from a burner email account, pretending to be a desperate student named Alex. I was enthusiastic, complimentary, and, most importantly, available to see the room at 2 p.m. that afternoon. Olivia, smelling easy money, responded immediately. "See you then." Next, I texted Mark. "Hey, can you come over around 2? I really need to talk to you about the wedding plans. It's important." The mention of the wedding was the perfect bait. He replied with a string of heart emojis and a promise to be there. Finally, I made sure my parents would be home. I knew my dad never missed his Saturday afternoon football game, and my mom would be supervising from the kitchen. The stage was set. I arrived at 1:55 p.m. and parked down the street, my heart pounding a steady, heavy rhythm against my ribs. It wasn't fear. It was anticipation. I watched as the college kid, a young man who looked no older than 19, walked up the driveway. A moment later, Olivia greeted him at the side door, her pregnant belly prominent, a welcoming smile plastered on her face. Then, Mark's car pulled up. He got out, whistling, and headed for the front door. Perfect. I let them all get settled. I gave Olivia enough time to give the grand tour of her investment property. I gave Mark enough time to get comfortable on the couch, probably accepting a drink from my mother. Then, I walked in. I entered through the front door, something I hadn't done in weeks. They were all in the living room. My dad in his recliner, eyes on the TV. My mom on the sofa next to Mark, chatting animatedly. The prodigal daughter returned from the garage. They all looked up, surprised. "Emma," my mom said. "I thought you were working." "I decided to take the afternoon off," I said, my voice even and calm. "I see we have a guest." Just then, Olivia walked in from the kitchen, the student trailing behind her. "Oh, hey," she said, her eyes widening slightly when she saw me. "This is Alex. He's just looking at some storage options." "Storage?" I asked, turning to the young man. "That's funny. The ad I saw called it a rustic student room. For $500 a month." The color drained from Olivia's face. The student, Alex, looked back and forth between us, a knot of confusion on his face. "Is there a problem?" he asked. "There is," I said, looking directly at my sister. "The problem is that this isn't her property to rent. And it's not a legal dwelling." I turned back to Alex. "I'm sorry you wasted your time. You should go." He didn't need to be told twice. He practically ran out the door. The moment the door clicked shut, the dam broke. "What the hell was that, Emma?" Olivia shrieked. "I was trying to help with expenses." "Help?" I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "By pocketing $500 while I pay the mortgage?" "Whose expenses were you helping, Olivia?" "Yours?" "Don't you take that tone with your sister," my father boomed from his chair, finally muting the game. "She's pregnant. She's under enough stress." Mark stood up, stepping into his role as the noble peacemaker. Everybody just calm down. Emma, honey, I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding. Oh, it's a misunderstanding, all right, I said, my gaze locking onto his. I've been misunderstanding a lot of things lately. I pulled out my phone. But some things have become crystal clear. I walked over to the smart TV. With a few taps, my phone's screen was mirrored on the 50-inch display. And there it was. The first screenshot of his conversation with Olivia. Mark, as soon as the baby comes, we'll figure out how to tell her. The room went completely silent. The only sound was a sharp intake of breath from my mother. Mark froze, his face a mask of horror. Olivia looked like she was about to faint. I didn't stop. I swiped to the next image. Ollie, I'm scared, Mark. I'm pregnant. Mark, don't be. It's ours. It's a sign. This is our family. Our family, I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. You two have been planning our family for months. In my house. On my dime. My mother started to sob, a low, wounded sound. My father was on his feet now, his face purple with rage, but he was looking at Mark and Olivia, not me. For the first time, his anger wasn't directed at the wrong daughter. Mark, I said, turning to face him. His eyes were wide with panic. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I believe our engagement is over. You might want to have a talk with your lawyer about custody arrangements and child support. Because that baby, I said, gesturing to my sister's swollen belly, has absolutely nothing to do with me. Olivia let out a strangled cry and sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. Mark just stood there, speechless, exposed. The perfect, supportive fiancé, revealed as a cheap, spineless cheat. But I wasn't finished. I turned to my parents. You wanted me to make room for the baby. Well, now you have all the room in the world. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. It was the sound of a world breaking. The comfortable, easy world I had built for them, the world they had taken for granted, was gone. And in its place was the cold, hard truth I had just displayed for them all to see. My mother was the first to speak, her voice trembling. Emma, we didn't know. Didn't you? I shot back, the ice in my veins finally melting into pure, hot rage. Or was it just easier not to look too closely? As long as the mortgage was paid and the fridge was full, why ask questions? Why notice that your golden child was sleeping with her sister's fiancé? My father, for the first time in 3 years, looked ashamed. He couldn't meet my eyes. He just stared at the floor, at the ruins of the family he had allowed to fester. Mark finally found his voice, a pathetic, pleading whisper. Emma. I love you. We can fix this. I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. It was a raw, liberating sound. Fix it? There is nothing to fix, Mark. You don't love me. You love my salary. You love my stability. You love that I was too busy taking care of everyone else to notice you were a snake. Get out of my house. It's not your house. Olivia screamed from the couch, her face tear-streaked and ugly. Isn't it? I replied, my voice dropping back to that icy calm. I've paid the mortgage on it for 36 consecutive months. I think my lawyer would argue I have more of a claim to it than anyone else in this room. But don't worry. I don't want it. I looked at each of them, one by one. My weeping mother, my defeated father, my pathetic ex-fiancé, and my treacherous sister. The 4 people who were supposed to be my foundation had become my burden. So here's what's going to happen, I announced, my voice ringing with an authority none of them had ever heard from me before. I'm giving you 3 options. Option 1, you start paying me market rate rent. We split every single bill, mortgage included, for ways. Starting today. I saw the panic in their eyes. My dad's disability, my mom's part-time job that barely covered her medical bills, Olivia's zero income. They knew it was impossible. Option 2, I continued, you have 60 days to find other living arrangements. All of you. I'll pay the mortgage for 2 more months to keep the bank off your backs. After that, you're on your own. 60 days, my mother gasped. With a new baby coming? We can't. Which brings us to option 3, I said, my voice as hard as steel. I walk out that door right now. I stop paying for everything tonight. The mortgage goes into default. The utilities get shut off. The house goes into foreclosure. And by Christmas, you're all on the street. Your choice. It was checkmate. The beautiful part was the math. It was pure, simple, undeniable mathematics cutting through years of emotional manipulation and delusion. I had given them a problem they couldn't expect me to solve. Mark, seeing his free ride evaporate before his eyes, grabbed his keys and practically bolted for the door without another word. Coward. My family just stared at me, trapped. Finally, my father spoke, his voice raspy. We'll take the 60 days. Smart choice, I said. I picked up my purse. I had already packed my car with the last of my essential things that morning. The clock starts now. I walked to the door. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. As I stepped out into the fresh air, I felt the weight of the last 3 years, the weight of their expectations and betrayals, lift from my shoulders. I wasn't running away. I was walking into my own life. A life that I would build for myself, on my own terms. And this time, there would be no room for parasites. The 3 months that followed were a quiet revelation. I moved into my new apartment, a 1-bedroom with clean walls, a real heating system, and a balcony that overlooked a park. The first night, I locked the door and just stood in the silence. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. The luxury of privacy, of having a space that was entirely my own, was so profound it almost brought me to tears. I threw myself into my work. Without the constant drain of my family's needs, I had more energy, more focus. I took on a challenging new project, working late because I wanted to, not because I was avoiding going home. My boss, Mr. Miller, noticed. He called me into his office one day and told me they were offering me a promotion to lead architect on the new downtown development. The salary increase was significant. I accepted on the spot. It felt like the universe was finally course-correcting. Meanwhile, the fallout at my old house was swift. I held up my end of the bargain, paying the mortgage for the final 2 months. The utility disconnection notices, which I had scheduled weeks in advance, began to arrive. My mother called me, frantic. The power is going to be shut off, Emma. What do we do? You could try paying the bill, Mom, I said, not unkindly. The instructions are on the notice. It was a crash course in adulting for them. They had to learn how to budget, how to prioritize, how to live within their means. It turned out that when survival was the only option, they were more capable than they had ever let on. My dad started taking on some remote consulting work, using the skills he'd let atrophy for years. My mom, her anxiety suddenly more manageable when faced with the alternative of homelessness, got a part-time job at a craft store. Olivia had her baby, a boy. I found out through a text from my dad. Mark was nowhere to be found. He had vanished, absolving himself of all responsibility, leaving Olivia to deal with the consequences of their affair alone. Apparently, without my salary to support his new family, fatherhood had lost its appeal. Olivia, for the first time in her life, had to get a job. She ended up working nights at a retail store. The golden child was finally learning what it meant to have responsibilities. They found a small 2-bedroom duplex across town. The rent was a struggle, but split between the 3 of them, it was manageable. They sold the old house. After the bank took its cut and the realtors got their fees, there wasn't much left. We split what remained. It wasn't a huge inheritance, but it was closure. I used my portion to buy a reliable new car and furnish my apartment exactly the way I wanted, with no compromises. The healing, if you can call it that, was slow and awkward. My mom would call monthly with updates I didn't ask for. My dad would text with home repair questions, which I'd sometimes answer with a link to a YouTube tutorial. Progress. About 6 months after I'd left, my father showed up at my apartment. He looked older, tired, but there was a clarity in his eyes I hadn't seen in years. He apologized. A real, honest apology. He admitted they had taken me for granted, that they had allowed their own fears and weaknesses to turn me into a solution instead of a daughter. "We forgot you had your own life to build," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm so sorry, Emma." I listened. I accepted his apology. But forgiveness is a complicated thing. "I know you're sorry, Dad," I told him, "but you have to understand that what you all broke can't be fixed overnight. It might never be the same." He nodded, accepting it. It was a start. My brother, my nephew, is a year old now. I've seen him a few times, in neutral territory, like a park or a coffee shop. Olivia and I are civil. The chasm between us is too wide to ever fully bridge, filled with too many lies and too much pain. She's a different person now, hardened by reality, humbled by motherhood. Sometimes, I see a flicker of the sister I once loved, but she's mostly a stranger to me now. A stranger I'm distantly related to. Last week, my dad texted me a photo. It was of him, my mom, Olivia, and the baby, all standing in front of their duplex. My dad had built a little planter box on the front steps. My mom had planted flowers in it. They were smiling. They looked tired, but they looked like a team. A functioning unit that no longer needed a scapegoat or a savior. They were surviving. On their own. And me? I'm thriving. My promotion at work has led to even bigger projects. I'm respected, valued for my skills and my mind. I've started dating again, cautiously, but with a newfound clarity about what I deserve. My life is quiet, peaceful, and entirely my own. Sometimes, late at night, I stand on my balcony and look out at the city lights. I think about that cold, dark garage. I think about the girl who sat there, shivering, feeling trapped and betrayed. It's strange, but I don't feel anger towards her anymore. I feel gratitude. Because she was the one who finally decided to stop fixing everyone else's life and started to build her own. And the foundation she laid that night? It's the strongest thing I've ever built. Thank you all so much for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to share, but I felt it was important. I'm curious, have any of you ever had to make a really difficult choice to protect your own peace? Let me know your story in the comments below. And if my journey resonated with you, please give this video a like and subscribe for more stories. It really does help.